And we are, as a people, inherently and historically
Wake up.
opposed to secret societies, the secret oaths, and the secret proceedings.
The show that asks questions about why we don't ask questions.
What the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Welcome to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. These are Conspiracy Queries, and I am Alan Park. We've got a pretty interesting show for you today. I'm speaking with Gill Broussard, who is a researcher. He is a amateur astronomer. Wanted me to emphasize amateur, but he's got some pretty stunning computer models and a very deep knowledge on the movement field of what is known as Planet 7X. I didn't say Planet X, I said Planet 7X, but we're also going to be talking about Planet X, what happened to it, what does it mean, what's going on, and we'll be doing that as soon as we come back, as soon as we get back from this spot you're about to hear. So let's do that right now. Should we do that? Yeah, let's do that. And we've got Gill waiting, so we'll be right back with Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. I'm Conspiracy Queries, and you're Alan Park. That's not quite right, but hey, it's not always easy to get it perfect. All right, just before we get to our interview with Gill Broussard, just keeping you up to date on the oil scams that are going on. You ever notice how all these trains are crashing with oil in them? It's happening all over the place, and they're putting some kind of meeting together to decide whether or not it's going to be necessary to get some pipelines going to lay that oil across from coast to coast. I wonder if that's got any kind of an official capacity behind it. But John Baird, the Canadian, I don't know what he is. Look him up. It's disgusting. I can't think about him. He's in Washington pushing for a prompt decision on the Keystone XL pipeline. Yes, the Foreign Affairs Minister is making public appearances with Keystone-friendly senators, and he really wants Obama to push that pipeline in and get that pipeline flowing. Shouldn't really be a surprise to know that that's what John Baird wants to tell another man to get his pipeline moving. John Baird, yeah. All right, without any further ado, we're going to find out about different worlds, not just this one, but the one that might be crashing into us, Planet 7X. And I'm going to take us over there now to our interview with Gill Broussard. Gill has brought some very fascinating information to my attention, and Gill is he's in. Where exactly are you in Louisiana, Gill?
In Abbeville, Louisiana.
Abbeville. Okay. All right. I hope you're not making that up. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, well, you can say south of Lafayette. We can say it again if you want. South of Lafayette.
South, that I've heard of. All right. Now, I have to admit, I don't know much about this arm of the arcane knowledge of what people call conspiracy theory or, secret matters. I don't understand much about Planet X, although I did hear about it a couple of years ago. It was supposed to crash into the Earth, Planet X. Everybody was getting very upset about, not everybody, but the people that were screaming about it were very upset about Planet X crashing into the Earth and perhaps spinning our magnetic poles the other way around, or at the very least, and at the very most, perhaps smashing our planet into a useless hulk. Point of it is, don't remember that happening, or we'd still be, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. What is Planet X? What is Planet 7X, which is what you're talking about? Please tell us the difference, and are we in any danger?
All right. To start off with, the main difference is to separate the data between what's out there basically on the internet and what's been told to the public by hearsay and documents, versus what I've found in the Chinese documents as well as biblical records.
In Chinese documents?
Yeah, the Chinese documents, because their astronomy records they go back further in history than any other civilization. And it's much more accurate because it's been known that the emperor at the time, if the astronomers didn't do their job exactly correct, they lost their heads. So they were quite motivated to document things as they were and very accurately. So it's been proven over and over that their records are quite solid as far as the research, trained astronomers of their time. And I found a difference between a discovery and what's been thrown on the internet as what we call today as Planet X. And so I can point those differences out to you.
All right, well, let's just start with what Planet X was, and let's catch up a few people that they might have missed that story. A couple of years ago, Planet X was on the way on a death trajectory with Earth. That's where I last left it. Can you make that a little more accurate for the listeners?
The most common story out there was that it was a star or a death star, or that had a 3,600-year orbit, and that had come in through our solar system, creating havoc of different levels, and that's what. But where they come up with that 3,600-year orbit, I found strange, because the Babylonian and Sumerian texts, they didn't have zeros at the time. So how did they know to add two more zeros to a number that's actually stated in the text as 36? And also what I found throughout the data of searches, the most common error was the word that we run into often as sun.
Sun?
That's implied.
You mean the star in the sky?
Sure. What they called it was a sun coming through, like a actual second sun coming in.
Okay.
And in ancient texts, the word actually would have meant an object, a heavenly body that's either illuminated or on fire. And to choose fire, where that would lead you to the sun, if it's illuminated, it could be a moon or a planet or a star or a comet. So only through additional data can the interpreter come up to an actual accurate prediction on which out of the four is it. And through the data that I found in the Chinese record, it is not a sun. It is a planet, though.
What is it that you're saying is a planet?
What I call Planet 7X, which everyone calls Planet X, is actually not a star, it's a planet.
Okay,
and,
so, all right, so I'm a little confused. So when everybody thought Planet X was coming, they thought it was a star?
Star, right. Some sort of like a Death Star and everything. That's what a lot of the documents. And that's easy to disprove, because Earth and life forms still exist. You can't have a sun coming into our solar system, without eliminating life. So that's what I found was quite ridiculous about the concept of a star coming in, and that's why I was looking to disprove such an object. And to my surprise, I found evidence that there is such an object, but not as a star, but as a planet.
Okay, and that is 7X.
7X, what we call it. It's listed in the Bible several times, and it's listed in history. And there's enough, when you start looking for data, and data that I'm looking for, it's not hearsay or just there it is in the sky. I am actually looking for like the month, the day, the time, the constellation that it was seen, the scale of brightness, the direction of travel, and is it by any known stars? And a series of observations. not just one day it was there and then there's no other information. And that's what the Chinese gave us. They gave us multiple sightings within a 26-month period. Well, from multiple sightings that are documented accurate, we can plot the orbit. We can duplicate the models with software, run the models, and see if this is a repeated phenomenon throughout history. If the model matches observed phenomena of other historical periods, then we have a real object. And that's what I found.
And exactly what did you use to find that? Is this like you have telescopes, and what other tools do you use to satisfy your professional interest?
Well, in the laboratory setting, like, creating your own laboratory, you start off with software. You start, and then you try to look for a separation of time that's common between the two, a pattern. And first, to determine the orbit, you have to know what sort of elliptical pattern are we looking at. Kepler's law of the planetary motion is quite specific on, the way it's fixed. The sun is a fixed point for this object to go around. Most objects come into our solar system at an angle, like most comets would. They're not on the planetary plane of Earth. It's only when either one leg will cross on Earth's planetary plane that will cause us a meteorite shower because of the debris field. But most objects come in at an angle, like Ison or any of them. They're at an angle to our planetary plane, not a threat to us whatsoever. Now,
let me just take you aside here, and let me ask you why you think it is that you've got it written here that you said NASA is pretty much silent on the matter. Is that true? And if so, why do you think that is the case?
Well, through an accidental finding that when after I did a overlay of the data that I had, and in the software models, one day I turned on, let's see where they sent the Pioneer and the Voyager probes. And to my surprise, it was in the same area of space that the data was pointing to. In 1992-93, I believe their instruments made a survey and made a triangulation, which is what they were going for. They were sending the probes looking for a new planetary body or life forms, whichever way you want to look at it, because they put a plaque on these probes with a record, a gold record, if you remember, introducing Earthlings to whoever they were trying to contact or make verification of that it either existed or didn't.
Okay.
And if you look up Dr. Harrington of the Naval Missile Observatory, he gave rough estimates. Well, this is the same area of space that we're looking at. The Chinese records, the biblical records, the space probes, and Dr. Harrington, as well as Matisse and Whitmar of the UL, their astrophysics, documented that the orbits of comets are warped in a certain region of space that points to a large gravitational body.
And we will find out in a second what that large region of space is, and if you know anybody that's living there and have friends and relatives and may want to make a warning phone call for them to get out of there. You're listening to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park on Sirius XM 167. So, Gill, you were just explaining how there's a certain area of space that you were narrowing this down to.
Yes, like today, that would be in the Sagittarius constellation, around that area. And what's interesting is that in the Bible, it gives us a spacing between events. If we took Noah's flood, between the first event and the second event is 150 days. And and then if you read Revelation 6 and 7, it appears it's talking about two meteorite showers. We're crossing the path of the debris fields, Earth is. And it talks about 5 months. Well, biblically, that's the same time frame, 5 months and 150 days. When we take that information and do a model and do the overlay of the Chinese data, we have an exact match. And that is like winning the lottery 7 or 8 times in a row. It's not by accident.
This doesn't happen.
We're looking at the same same object. Because it's on a planetary plane. It's not at an angle.
Right.
And it's, and that's the same area of space where they sent the Voyager and the Pioneer probes, 3 of them anyway. They sent 2 probes out, sending them 180 degrees opposite of each other, because they didn't know if it was going to be to the north of our solar system or to the south, because there's anomalies that shows up in the planets on either side. But when they sent these 2 probes out first, one probe slowed down in its speed because gravity was pulling at it, and the other one was speeding up, and it was pulling it towards it. So they knew which direction to send the next 2 probes. So they had 3 probes going in the exact direction that they were going to make their observation with their instruments. And that was around 92, 93. After that point, NASA went silent. No more publications on our Planet X, that they called it. You look at publications before that, they state they were looking for Planet X because of the gravitational anomalies. And why is the data? Remember, we have 360 degrees on our own planetary plane, but we also have 360 degrees up and down.
Has this type of an impact, and I mean that specifically, happened before, to your knowledge?
Not to this degree.
No.
Of overlay.
But there have been other meteor.
We found planets with a lot less data than this that I've compiled that has an overlay that's matching.
Okay, now let's move into the area of the Bible. Like, where does this overlay exactly into what what many say in the Bible is true? Where do you see this?
We can start with the first one. We have the incident of Noah's flood. At the time, if you understand the story, it says upper waters were the floodgates of heaven. That's more than a normal rain. The floodgates were open up. Some people believe that it was a canopy. We had water under the ground as well as water above ground, and that we didn't have oceans. We had seas and lakes. And when Earth passed through the debris field, the meteorite shower broke the canopy of water, causing the floodgates of heaven, and the Earth stayed flooded for 150 days. Second event, a large meteorite, size of a mountain, hit Earth. That made the Gulf of Mexico. The data, there's enough data, and the calculations prove it. That the only reason why they're not accepting the Gulf of Mexico today as not being a crater is that they have a problem with heat.
Who does?
The second, that when you get to a larger impact, there's 2 levels of heat. One, from the blast. Second, a frequency is emitted that all carbon molecules will violently vibrate, and they're spontaneous combust. So life should not exist, as one person had pointed out to me. But I pointed out to him that this impact happened when the Earth was flooded. Therefore, there's no problem with heat. And we're missing 71% of our top crust, which is exactly the volume of our two oceans. Ocean layer is our second layer, like on an onion. Continental crust floats on top of ocean layer.
How do you? Let me just jump in. How do you measure something like that? When you say the top section of our topsoil, 71% of our topsoil is the same as the volume of the ocean. Is that right?
Yes. Well, we know how much the volume of our ocean is and how much continental crust we have.
Sure.
You can go off the edge where the continental divides. That's where the crust stops, and it goes about 30 miles deep. And think of the ocean layers like a memory foam. The continental crust is pressing into the oceanic floor, and that's why we have continental drift. Now, it's interesting that the missing 71% of our continental crust is the same volume as our moon. The moon was created at the time of this impact. And what's interesting is the moon is not literally mentioned in the Hebrew script till Joseph of Egypt, which is roughly 400 to 600 years later.
Wow.
And a German scientist, I don't have his name, but he had estimated that the debris would have coalesced into a moon between 300 to 400 years later. And there's no physical, they have a word for a moon, and it's not used until Joseph of Egypt, 600 years later. So, and then, like, if you take, it's Hezekiah, well, how about Joshua's long day? There was a 12-hour extended time of daylight. The same model with the same overlay again. Earth is going through the magnetosphere of planet 7X. That plasma field is reducing the energy from the Earth going into our north and south pole. And we lose power to cause us to rotate 4.5 to 5.5% loss compounded hourly. And guess what you have? You have an Earth stopping within 24 hours. And you have an extended day. By the time it passes us and Earth clears it, it matches the story that is identified in the scriptures. He had an army of 30,000 against an army of 300,000. And and they were all witness to this. At the right time, a meteorite shower took out their enemy. And he states more the enemy was taken out by the fiery hail than they killed with a sword. And then the most recognized event, if you look at Jesus, which is Yeshua in Hebrew, Yeshua's sacrifice on the cross. Well, they had 3 hours of darkness that was documented outside the Bible, as well as in the Scripture. You cannot get a 3-hour eclipse using the moon. You only have like 7.5 minutes before Earth will rotate out of a small spot that's causing a shadow. You do not have the entire Earth being darkened for 3 hours. You have to have a third object. Main reason is Passover, there's a full moon. The moon's on the opposite side of Earth. You can only have a solar eclipse if you have a new moon. The new moon is not present. It's 15 days later. 30 days, So
I don't know how you figured all this out.
So we have a third object that's involved with a 3-hour eclipse.
Who would need to know about that third object? Who's in the need to know loop right there?
Anybody who lives on planet Earth?
Yeah, but nobody knows about it. I mean, you're telling me about it. I'm learning about it now, but hardly anyone knows about it. I'm saying there must be someone on Earth, like it is NASA or the Department of Defense or, those
Since
people?
1992, you notice the government has been issuing out a lot of grants and monies to different. Since 1992, they went overboard on issuing out money everywhere.
Okay.
Okay, when you sign a grant, you cannot, when it's to a observatory, you cannot release information that can cause a panic without congressional approval. If you've taken money as a grant, you have to have congressional approval before you can release the information. If they consider it a possible panic. Remember Orson Welles, whatever, that announced this and it caused a panic?
Right, the War of the Worlds. Yeah.
Right. That set the model for Congress to don't want to set panics up. If we're going to issue money, then you have to get our okay to release it. If it's an asteroid coming in, it's not a threat, it's just going to pass close, then go ahead and release it. But if it's a possible threat, you have to hold off until we know it is clear.
Well, we're going to hold off for a couple seconds here, Gill, because we do have to take a quick break. We're talking about Planet X, Planet 7X, what kind of helmet you might need if there is an impact. And you're listening to Canada Talks, Channel 167 on Sirius XM. We're back with Gill Broussard talking about some very large evidential pieces of information that point to a possible impact from Planet 7X. And we were trying to sort out Planet 7X, Planet X, and what we can possibly do to pay more attention to the signs that this is, in fact, something that we need to be aware of. So, Gill, how do you put this information together? How do you do this?
Well, with models, whenever you have the overlay that with modern day software, like today, I can place myself in Beijing at a given point in time in its history, like in 1054, when it was documented by the Chinese. So I can see the same sky as what they saw at the time that they were doing their observation, and look at the model that we placed in there. When we do the overlay to biblical, it's matching the observation of the Chinese of Beijing of that time, and it's an object that's on a planetary plane, and it crosses Earth's path twice, once in the month of Passover, and once towards the end of August, 5 months apart. And this is a repeat pattern throughout history right now that I've found. Planet X and Planet 7 is we have now enough data to plot.
Sorry, we have enough data to do what?
To do a plot of its orbit.
Right.
And therefore it shows us that it's closer to a 360-year orbit, not 3,600. And the Babylonians did not have a zero existing in their math yet. So zeros are implied. So that's left up to the person who's doing the interpreting, whether or not he has 1, 0, 2, 0, 3 zeros. The data, he didn't have enough data to make an accurate interpretation. And that's what's going on right now, is inaccurate information. And people can turn to my YouTube channel if they wish to see some videos of the data and the models.
Let's give that out now. Let's give out that YouTube channel while people are...
Okay.
A lot of people, I'm sure, right now are sitting right in front of their computers. So give us that website.
Well, you can go to YouTube and just type in Planet 7X. And I have over a dozen videos of each model that the data is overlaying and how it represents what the viewer is describing, and it matches. One of the interesting, like in Hezekiah's time, there was Hezekiah thought that he was dying, and he wanted a sign, and the prophet at the time said he'll live another 15 years, and he says one at a time. He told him, he says, I want God to move the shadow back and forward. Now, in the King James, it says sundial. In the Hebrew, it actually says steps. Now, if it was in a sundial, that means the sun has to move east to west. Okay, that would cause mile-high waves, but that's not what it says in Hebrew. It says steps. If the steps had a window casting a shadow from the south, then we're talking about a tilt of the earth of 26 to 28 degrees. And this repeats itself in a German artifact that they found called the Nebra disk. The Nebra disk shows that they can see the constellation of Orion at their latitude, and they cannot in the month of April. Only if the Earth would have tilted 26 to 28 degrees could you see the constellation of Orion in that month. And I have a video showing that as well, that the model proves that out. And,
well, what do you make of all this then? Where are we? Can you tell us what happened exactly when the mainstream sort of awareness of Planet X it got a little bigger, it got a little more aware and prominent in people's awareness, but then nothing happened, obviously, or nothing that we were aware of, like a massive impact, and then a year goes by and we kind of forget all about that stuff. Do you find it difficult sometimes trying to get people to pay attention to your model's work?
Tremendously. All of the false calls have caused people to ignore actual factual data. And there's probably not enough people interested in just data. Or there are a few, and that's what I'm trying to present is data. Not false claims, not hype, because I have nothing to gain in this. So I present the models with the data for anybody to grab their own calculator or buy software and reproduce these models and look at the data. You know, they have a term for that. It's called science. It says, how do you define science? Well, if you can take a documented phenomenon into the laboratory and show that it's repeatable, that is called science.
Right.
And whether it comes from the Bible, part of the data, or clay tablets, or Chinese script, it does not matter. You cannot fake Kepler's laws of planetary motion in a 26-month period of observation and get it right. You can't even do it. You can do it once, but you can't do it twice. As far as multiple sightings, because as an object is moving towards the sun, it's gaining speed, and and it has an elliptical orbit. It's not a circular orbit where it's going to be at a steadier rate. It's going to move to the next constellation and next. It doesn't work that way. For you to guess Kepler's laws is impossible. So they have to have seen a real object if it's matching Kepler's laws of planetary motion, and it's a repeatable phenomenon on the models.
Right.
There's no other answer to this.
Now, you say, according to the Chinese records, the astronomers who knew the stars were able to notice a new star before its arrival with their unaided eye. Where were you able to access the Chinese records, and how do we get past the mutual distrust, I guess you could say, between China and the rest of the world? I mean, China was already claiming that there's no evidence that the United States even went to the moon just last week, or not the United States didn't go to the moon last week. Of course they didn't go to the moon last week, but you know what I mean? That last week it was announced that Iran believes that, China rather, has made claims that with their information they have right now, that there's no evidence that Americans have even been to the moon. And a lot of Americans believe that as well. So, but how do we trust the your source of Chinese data?
Okay, first let's remove ourselves from politics and just examine the science, okay, we're looking at hundreds of year difference. The communist government we have in China did not exist at that time. It was an emperor. Emperor wanted straight data from the astronomers, otherwise they lost their heads. So are the astronomers motivated to do the job right? You bet. Have we used their data in the past to prove that they are accurate? Thousands of times. It is a known fact that the Chinese astronomers working for the emperor did accurate work. The data that I'm using is a scientific white paper, not hearsay. It's called, and I'll give you the title right here and who the authors were and the publisher. Publisher is Pergamon. The article is called A Reevaluation of the Eastern and Western Records of the Supernova of 1054. Author is Breen and MacArthur. This is done in Ireland by the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies that published this article. They show without a doubt that the 1054 supernova was not a supernova, that this object is documented in the Chinese record as moving, and they documented where it was sighted, in what constellation, in what month, as it moved. This object moved on a planetary plane, and it matches the 150-day model that I was showing you. And we can also look at a report by Matisse and Whitmire from the UL University, a white paper. They talk about what area of space that the comets, orbits, are warped by a gravitational body. That they estimate it's outside the solar system, but that is an estimate. That is not rooted in fact. You have to guess where it's at, but what's factual about their report is the orbits of the comets are warped and the area of space that is documented that is being warped at. This object is in our solar system. What I'm estimating it right now is between Saturn and Jupiter, roughly midway.
All right. Well, we're going to come back.
That's an estimate.
That's an estimate, of course. I'm not going to hold you to that. If I go up there and find it's not there, I won't come back and give you a hard time. We're going to take a quick step aside here from Gill Broussard. We'll be right back on Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. And we are back to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Our final segment, we're speaking with Gill Broussard, has some very startling information for us in the way of an impact and or other fascinating informational claims based on the planet 7X. Not Planet X. Planet 7X. All right. Gill, are you? Would it be safe to say you are a believer in the Bible?
Yes. Yes, I am. The data has proven to me to be there's data in there that man did not know, and there's points that I can prove out that mathematically and the physics there is quite incredible.
Okay, so, give me an example of something in that category.
Oh, that's interesting. The one that a good example is something that we can't build, but yet we can calculate.
All right.
It describes what's called the New Jerusalem. It comes from second heaven, which is space, where the planets are, into the first heaven, which is where the atmosphere is. That's there's two different heavens. Heaven where space is, and the second one where the birds fly.
Right.
So you get an object that's going from the vacuum of space into 14.7 pounds atmospheric pressure. Okay? So we can calculate that. How thick of a vessel would it take to hold such a pressure? It tells us in the Bible that the walls of this New Jerusalem is, I think, 210 feet thick. And, well, I used formulas that we use for offshore vessels to calculate pressure and wall thickness. Well, when I first did the calculations on this object for the New Jerusalem using steel, it said it needed to be 1,400 feet thick.
1,400 feet thick.
It said 700 feet thick. Not until I used diamond. There was a soft and a hard diamond. I used the mid area of the tensile strength. It gave me 210 foot thick, as the biblical scripture says. Next sentence, it says that the wall is clear as glass. We are not building anything that has a material strength stronger than steel that's clear as glass, unless it's diamond. Diamond is carbon. The most abundant substance in the solar system is one of them is carbon, and that's what diamonds are.
Right.
Then they said the gates are spherical, like a pearl. The only type of gate that can hold pressure in a vessel would be a spherical gate that rolls, that turns, that swivels. Okay? A hinge gate would be blown right off the hinges. It could not be designed.
Gotcha.
So explain to me how people 2,000 years ago, that their building materials were clay bricks, stone, and the biggest achievement was the pyramid, could guess something that's outside the realm of construction and give us the right parameters that matches the formulas today. And I could go deeper with this, but it's impossible.
Why?
It's something that he's describing what he's seeing. He's measuring what he's seeing.
Right.
He's not guessing. He saw something that was real. Because we can put this phenomena in the laboratory and build a model that confirms tensile strength, pressures, and everything. You can't do it. You cannot be that. You cannot guess that well. To have an object, they say it's 1,300 miles across, with a wall 210 foot thick, with spherical gates. And he says the city is laid out in a square. When something is laid out, it's on something. When you lay the city in the center, in a square, you have to ask, how big is the square? When you put the center of that dome over the center of the Temple Mount and look at the dimensions, it matches the dimensions of Eden. So the Garden of Eden was east of Eden. The garden was between the Euphrates and the Tigris River. That's exactly what the layout gives us from observation away from Earth, like from a satellite view. You can go to Google and draw a circlet, or just turn to one of my videos and see it. And then if you want to see the square, what size square? If you draw from the Temple Mount a square and it goes and touches the Euphrates River to the Nile, it's the same boundaries as God gave the prophecy to the Israelites. And that square matches the Fibonacci number that all living things, creatures, flowers, are following. It matches the math that's existing in front of us as well as written on there.
The Fibonacci sequence again.
To give us the measurements that would match a satellite view. They couldn't do it. That's outside the realm of 2,000-year-old man giving us this data. And this goes multiple times, this happens in the Bible. There's actual data to be mined and applied physics and astronomy. The Bible's been proven. Over 100 years ago, archaeologists, if you were to ask them, is the Bible true? Can you prove it in archaeology? They would say no. 80% of the objects, kings, battles, places are not known. The Bible is not true. Now it has a different opinion today. Because now they found over 80% of the battles, the cities, the kings' names are found now. Now they look at the Bible as a credible source for digging in certain spots to find archaeological artifacts. But no one's tried the Bible for astronomy. Biblical astronomy is a new realm. And you can go to my channel and see multiple examples where I show the data and the numbers and the models. It's the same model, same overlay. Nothing's changed with the overlay. It's the same elliptical overlay on the planetary plane of Earth.
So you have in there Planet 7X orbital path video. You have a summary of events of Planet 7X. You have a new flood event, lots of
right.
information, and the Israel tidal wave as well.
Right.
So all of your videos on your channel, your YouTube channel, are relating to this. So it's youtube.com/user/planet7x/videos. Check that out. All right. Well, that's great, Gill. Thanks for pointing this stuff out to us. I don't know. Do you do a lot of this work? Do you have an office, or do you do it do you have a bunker? What's going to happen? Do you think we're going to get hit by one of these things, or?
Well, like I said, I don't think I pointed this out yet, but in Revelation, Seal 6 and 7 mirrors the scientific overlay of us Earth going through the debris fields twice. It even states what side of the Earth will be hit. It says 1/3 of the grass, trees, and later it says rivers. That's their way of describing continental crust. They had a limited vocabulary. You have to think in the way of ancient languages. What half of the Earth is going to go, because only half of the Earth is hit from the debris field. The other half is shielded because it's facing the debris field, and the other half is facing away. So half of the Earth is going to go through the debris field. What half is 1/3 of the continental crust? That's North and South America.
Are you going to move, Gill? Do you have any? Can you just leave us before we go, because we're out of time now, unfortunately? But do you have some safe spots that you think would be less affected than others? Yes,
I believe the general mainstream scientists right now, since they do not have a model for a 12-hour delay on Earth's rotation, like in Joshua's battle, that they'll predict the wrong half of the Earth to be hit. They will predict the Middle East or Europe and Asia to be hit by a meteorite shower. And with a 12-hour delay, it will cause North and South America to be hit. And without knowing that model, there's only a biblical model. There's no scientific model for this. Therefore, this error is most likely to happen. And we have to go against that futuristic day predictions, scientific predictions. We'll have to go in the pathway of their predicted fire.
Well, Gill, I hope you're wrong. I really do. I can't tolerate you being right on this. I hope you're making a huge series of mistakes, but I thank you for doing the work. It sounds like you're saying the only place we can all be safe when this happens is the South Pole, and I'm just not into it.
Well, it's not coming from the South Pole. It's along the eclipse.
Good. Okay, so I guess we do have to hide on the South Pole. All right, everyone, there's your hot tip to be hanging out in a cold place when you want to avoid another world smashing into us. Gill Broussard, thank you very much for joining us. We will see you next time on Conspiracy Queries.
Thanks for listening to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Please offer comments or complaints by emailing conspiracyqueries@gmail.com or on Twitter @con_queries or at our website, conspiracyqueries.com. Thanks for listening.